Hey, Global Village, what's up? Okay, there's something that's really bothering me at the moment, and like always, I tend to feel at a certain point that I just have to make these silly little videos of mine just to get shit off my chest. Now, I don't know whether it ultimately makes me feel a whole lot better about making the videos, but I do know that if I don't make them, it feels bad. And yeah, for better or worse, I've just got to do it. And in this particular case, before I jump into the central point I want to make, uh, the situation with the genocide in Gaza is reaching what I would call its final stages. Now, that isn't to say that we're close to seeing like the entire population of the Palestinian people in Gaza being completely wiped out. That's not exactly what I mean by that, but I want to use, like I often do, a little bit of a sort of simple, if perhaps in some ways flawed analogy, which hopefully nonetheless will get my point across. And that is imagining the point of a fishhook, because a fishhook goes in easy, but it comes out very messy and it's hard. If you want to take it out, it's takes a real concerted effort, and there needs to be a lot of skill if you want to get that fishhook out without creating an unholy mess while you're doing it. So yeah, the same really can be said of everything that's happening to the Palestinian people, because every settlement that gets built, every piece of land, and every basic right that the Palestinian people lose is going to be incredibly hard to get back once it's lost. And so in this continued conflict that's going on at the moment, in every piece of every basic right, every piece of physical land that the Palestinian people lose, it's going to be very, very difficult to take it back. And Israel knows this. And believe me, their invasion of Gaza, it's going to be many years, if not decades, before we see Israel actually move out and give up their military occupation of Gaza. Now, there may be talks about them being willing to do that in some very vague term, as per the 20-point plan for peace in Gaza. And I think it is the most idiotic and ridiculous thing I've ever had to listen to. Listening to Trump and Netanyahu sort of hold their press conference, upon which no questions were allowed afterwards, was just farcical. This is a plan that's either designed for utter failure, or if somehow the Hamas delegation feel that they now have no other choice but to just completely capitulate, well, the actual terms are sufficiently vague that, in point of fact, I don't really see this as much of an impediment against Israel continuing to prosecute their goal of ultimately completely taking full ownership of Gaza in the long term. So even if they do agree to it in its current shape and form, it just means there's now a kind of stalling, and we now hit a moment of sort of equilibrium, where everything kind of sits as it is for a while, and then, I don't know, several years or even decades down the road, Israel just push for more. So like I said, the fishhook goes in easy, it comes out very difficult. And this is exactly what we're seeing here. And this so-called peace plan is just another example of that. To be clear, the mealy-mouthed sort of rhetoric, even against people that and nations, and a good example of that are the Netherlands. I listened to talk between the current Prime Minister in the Netherlands and Al Jazeera, and some could say he's kind of a little more sympathetic to the Palestinian cause, and he uses this rhetoric about the hope and possibility of a two-state solution in the future. This is just not happening. It's this kind of sort of, yeah, we're kind of with the Palestinian people, but we need to kind of have this sort of two-way dialogue to get ourselves in a position where all the hostages get returned back and where Hamas is completely militarily disabled. Then we can kind of get that sort of two-state solution thing going. This is 100% certified bullshit. It's not actually going to happen, because in no shape or form do Israel ever want a two-state solution. So until we actually start speaking cold, hard truths about where Israel are really at and their Zionist intentions, can we actually have an honest conversation about what needs to happen? Because ultimately what needs to happen is a one-state solution where you have equal rights for all. It's as simple as that. So there needs to be a massive reform in terms of what Israel represents. And a two-state solution is just a joke. It's a game that Israel has been playing with the rest of the world for decades, and pretty much ever since the statehood was established, to just kind of play this thing out while they work towards their true ambitions, which is just, continued expansion, basically, of their colonial enterprise. But anyway, getting back to actually why I really wanted to make this video, and it comes down to being honest about the true cause of a problem. Because something I have been guilty of here is going hard at the sort of the fanatical settlers who are building their settlements illegally under international law. And it's very easy to target the real crazy religious fanatics, because they are capable of terrible violence, and they are apparently a thorn in the side of trying to pursue this so-called two-state solution. But they're not the true root cause of the problem, because actually a large proportion of the Zionist movement is quite secular in nature and is more cultural than it is religious. So what is actually happening here is that the fanatical Zionist settlers are simply a tool. And what I mean by that is, under any reasonable society, a group of people with this kind of religious fanaticism would be completely marginalized and largely declawed, so that they would be ostensibly an embarrassment to the greater population, who you just can't really get behind this type of extreme religious rhetoric, which calls for the complete destruction and annihilation of the Palestinian people because the land belongs to them, blah 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 blah. It's just psychotic talk. No reasonable people are going to get behind that. But what is actually happening here is that the more what I would call secular Zionist movement are just cynically using the fanatics to help sabotage any opportunity for a two-state solution, because indeed that's not what they want either, and that ultimately they very much have a goal of complete and utter ownership of all of the Palestinian territories. So yeah, they're just cynically leveraging the fanatics in their culture to help achieve their own goal. And so yeah, the true root cause here is the ambition of Zionism itself, and how it is in fact willing to compromise basic human rights to achieve its overarching goals. So it's a morally destitute belief system. So if we're going to continue down that line, we have to actually realize that if you keep stepping backwards, it ultimately all goes back to Western imperialism, and which ultimately you have to look at America here and the USA's unending support of Israel, their willingness to just continually pump billions of dollars into their economy to arm them with the very latest in weaponry to continue to prosecute the genocide. And then you can actually see the true root cause. So the true root cause is Western imperialism and how it continues to support Zionism, which in turn continues to support the fanaticism of the sort of the messianic Zionist settlers. So it just all sort of cascades down. But to go all the way back, we have to take ownership of what Western society is, what it was built on, and even ultimately the uncompromising and uncomfortable truth of what Israel is, why it exists, and why it is so ridiculously well supported, despite the fact that most people in most so-called civilized Western countries are absolutely horrified by what they are watching happen in Gaza, and confused and don't understand how our governments can allow this to happen. Well, they can allow it to happen because it is very much a part of Western imperialism, which is the whole aspect of why we get to enjoy the modern lifestyles and creature comforts, the clean and hot water that I can gain immediate access to if I walk out into my kitchen. All of that is a result of Western imperialism. So in many respects it comes back to us, and we have to ultimately take ownership of why we get to enjoy what we get to enjoy today, and the ultimate price that the people like the people in Palestine and other people ultimately in third world countries have had to pay in order for us to enjoy what we have today. It's a bit of a mea culpa moment, but it is what it is. But I do think if we want to be honest about the ultimate truth of what is happening here, then we just have to keep stepping it back and look in the mirror of how we get to enjoy what we have today. All right, bendy out.